Uh, Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second episode of Safari Guide Chronicles by Jenman Safaris. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you could make it, or if you're watching the recording later, I'm glad you found time to watch. We started a series of guide chronicles to bring our safari experiences closer to people who wish to be here right now in Africa. That's where obviously we are and have been locked in for a while. But also to take this opportunity, which we have never had before, to have a proper conversation with our guides and also allow them to come onto platforms to speak like this to more than just their immediate guests. But to the broader community, to the broader world who wants to find out what's going on in a guide's heads, and also what are you doing now that you can't guide, you can't do what you set out to do, what your dreams have been for such a long time. It's a wonderful way to connect and to learn, and I'm particularly proud today having Chantel with me. She has been with Jenman for the past 18 years. So that's basically longer even than I've been around at Jenman. And Chantal has seen many, many changes and has come or have come in the business, but also in the guiding world and maybe even with travelers. And it truly, truly makes my heart sing giving her a stage today and talking also about strong women in the industry and what it means to guide as a woman in a relatively male-dominated industry, but also how the teamwork works differently with male guides on the road, and what opportunity it can actually create being a female on the road. So I'm going to not talk for much longer, but actually give Chantel the stage. Before that, however, I want to mention that Chantel's first job was in the Sabi Game Reserve before she started working for us, and she wanted something more permanent, and she sent 17 faxes. So if we now go back, we say Chantal also has been with us for 18 years. Just back in the day where it was still faxes or not emails that we had to do and had to send in order to get jobs or in order to communicate. That is quite phenomenal how far we have developed and where we are today. So Chantal, welcome. It's so great to have you here. I give you the floor to introduce yourself, but also tell me how, what influenced you to become a guide? What was your motivating factor?
Hi, Katja, so nice to see you. And hi, everybody out there in the virtual world, which has become our new connection these days. I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited to talk to you all. Yeah, I mean, guiding for me, it was never something I knew that I wanted to do all my life, but the way that the way I grew up and the things that clearly I was good at and passionate about sort of came early on in life. We could see that through my parents' actions and travel that they took us on. We would often go camping, we'd go hiking, we'd go to Kruger National Park. And so through them, they gave me this love for the outdoors, for the fauna and flora of South Africa. And, you know, it was just through their guidance and the way they brought me up that I just fell in love with nature. And it was clear very on in my life that I was drawn to people, and I had a natural talent for talking to people. I was always making friends. You know, we'd be in a new place where there were a lot of people, and within 5 minutes, I'd have 3 or 4 kids around me, and we, you know, be telling them what to do and what we're going to be playing. And so it was very, very clear early on that that I had a connection with people and wanted to be around them and had a pure passion for them. So it was through that, and then also through reading Wilbur Smith. My father was a very big fan of his books, and so they were lying around at times. And once I was a little bit older, in my early teens, I picked up some of his books, and that just woke up that sort of search for adventure and that desire to go and see new places and experience new things. So definitely through my parents, and then through good old Wilbur Smith. That was what sort of led me into the direction I ended up in.
Brilliant, Chantel. You will be excited to hear saying that you've always been about exploring new places. We've got people from Canada, from Swakopmund, and from the UK watching live right now. So
Awesome.
I don't know if any of them have been, and South Africa, if any of them have been on one of your tours, whether they're past clients or future guests. We'll figure that out, or maybe you guys can leave a comment in the comments here, then we know better. Chantel, what I just heard you say was like, I always, I decided what we're going to play, where we're going to go. So I hear that like very early on in your life, you developed this little bit of a bossiness, or we call it today leadership role.
Yes.
And it's quite interesting. I remember chatting to Jonathan in our first session, and he said something similar. And you and I in our pre-session, in our test drive here, you mentioned you and Jonathan had so much in common. Tell me what that is.
Well, yeah, I was quite interested when I was watching you and Jonathan when you did your show, because it was just amazing to me how we had such a similar journey in that, we were passionate about people, passionate about Africa, and through just being interested in looking into different things, we found our way into guiding. It just seemed the natural place for us to end up. And so yeah, it's amazing. I was quite chuffed that I've always loved Jonathan. He's a fantastic guide and a wonderful human being. But yeah, it was quite interesting to see how similar our journeys had actually been, and that we ended up in very much the same place.
So interesting. So your journeys must have been similar, but your experiences must have been so different. And I want to speak a little bit into the opportunities that it creates being a female guide, but I also just maybe, what are the differences? What can you say is truly different working as a female guide, and what do you feel is truly different being led by a female guide in on your safari?
Oh. Well, I think working as a female guide can be a little bit challenging to begin with when you first meet people and so on, because people generally have a little bit of a stereotype when it comes. They expect when they go to Africa on a safari or something, they expect there's going to be, some guy with a rifle in his khaki, shirt and pants, and he's going to be taking around the, dangerous Africa, whatnot. And so I think it was often a little bit of a surprise for some people when I showed up and told them I would be their guide for the next 3 weeks through Africa. So I think that I needed to very quickly show them that I was confident and that I knew what I was doing. From the first moment we meet them in that first pre-departure briefing, I needed to ensure that I had that confidence and gave them the right kind of feeling and information and atmosphere that they would immediately feel safe with me. So that was very important, that I always started on the right note. And, I think as a woman, we often are a little bit more interested in the more organizational side of things. So I think that helps a lot on safaris, so there are certainly strengths that women have. But I must say, in my journey as a female guide, I was never really, I never felt discriminated against or looked down upon or anything like that. Most often I was met with surprise. At first people would see me, especially like a policeman at a roadblock, he would stop you and just check your basic papers. And he'd be so surprised to have a woman, driving the car up all by herself to Victoria Falls to go and start a tour there. And then the same, you'd have that, you'd meet in campsites, you'd run into other vehicles, other safari operators, and they'd be mostly men guiding those trips. But there's a real camaraderie in the safari business and in the overland business that, we stick together. And so there'd be that initial surprise that I'm a woman, but then there'd always be friendliness and openness and a willingness to help. And so, I always felt really welcomed in the industry. And there is a very close-knit community within guides, because us up on the road in the middle of some of these desolate places, we're the only ones who can help each other sometimes. So there's a very strong bond between guides. You might meet someone once on a trip where you ran parallel, and you won't see them again for 5 years or anything, and then you run into them again randomly, and it's just the most amazing thing, and you have this really deep connection. So I always felt very comfortable and welcomed in the industry by most men.
And I am so excited to hear that, really. It's I have felt that camaraderie with the guides whenever I step foot into Vic Falls or Botswana, or when our guides also come into our Cape Town office. The warm heart that you guys have, which you obviously need, dealing with so many different souls from different generations, different upbringing, is also translates in how you treat each other. And it's lovely that to see this teamwork and this cooperation, this collaboration. And I think it's something that we office people can really, really learn from. It's almost like there's very little competition between you guys, and it's all really be in this together, and let's make it work, and let's show the world what a beautiful continent we have. Talk to me a little bit about group dynamics and compassion, because you have guided different types of groups for a very, very long time. And I felt in our pre-run, you said something really, really important, that you mentioned it just now as well. Women, girls, we are obviously often more interested in the organizational stuff, but we also can be better listeners and read between the lines. How has that helped you?
Yeah, I think as a woman, and you kind of also take on a little bit of a motherly figure for the people within the group. And so especially through mediation of conflicts, which you can get on tour, you've got people from all over the world, different, they don't all know each other beforehand. And then you have them coming together on this wonderful journey, which can also be tiring and stuff. So you do get these little moments when people have, they might not get along 100%. And so I think through being a woman and having that caring attitude and a compassionate and being a good listener, it helps you a lot through the mediation of these group dynamics. Groups can be very interesting. You could get someone on the first day that just has an instant dislike for someone else on the tour. And, it takes a little bit of management and a little bit of, magic that you work with your group and to get that trip then to still run off smoothly and to just go as it should. And I think as women, we tend to be a little bit better at that side of the business. But yeah, that's not to say there aren't fantastic male guides out there who know how to handle these things as well. But I think that little bit of compassion and caring that comes in as a woman does bring a bit of a plus to it.
Great. And I would love to hear from our audience. Do you have any specific questions that are maybe burning questions with regards to Chantel being a female guide in the industry, whether it's career oriented questions or whether it's safety questions or anything like that? I'm sure Chantel can provide quite some insight. So please ask any question related to that. Chantel, actually, here we've got Natasha commenting. Welcome, Natasha, saying she's busy studying to be a guide, and it's lovely to listen to female guides in the male world. So what advice would you give anyone who wants to become a guide? Male, female, doesn't really matter. But what advice would you give?
Well, I think the first thing is that you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to know that you can do this, and you've got to have that desire to spend your time sharing your life and yourself with people, because it's not just about telling them the practical information and the historical information. That's very true, but you must be willing to share of yourself because that's what people look for. They want to connect, and that's so. If you have that intrinsic love for people and need for connection, then you already are way ahead of the game, and you will possibly be a very good guide. So believe in yourself and nature, that love for people, nurture that. And then read everything you can. Read fiction books, read, reference books, read The Economist, read People magazine. You never know what could come up in a conversation because you'll get people from all over the world. Read the newspapers, grow your knowledge. Because you can't plan for every question that you'll get as a guide. And certainly you won't ever really know everything. But the more you read and the more you educate yourself, the better you're going to be ultimately, and the closer you can connect with all of your guests on their different levels and within their different interests.
Chantel, that is such great advice, and not just for guides, but I think for anyone who is in the hospitality industry and needs to connect with people. And I can second what you say, that overextending yourself and giving of yourself in our industry is part of it. You share, as we always say, our job is also part of our lives. It's very tricky to really draw a line, but you give a lot of yourself and your personality, and I guess then being honest about who you are makes it easier in the long run, because
Yes.
you don't have to hold up a fake image. I apologize for the dogs in the background. Chantel, there's another question from Sean. I would love you to answer. What was your biggest scare on a safari trip?
There's been a lot of moments, but we were walking once in the Okavango Delta, and we had a local Botswana guide with us. We were a small group, but we were walking, and we had spotted a lone bull elephant in the distance. And as we were walking a little bit further in more of an open area, we noticed there were a few more bulls just a little bit to the left of us. And there was quite a large island with palm trees and a variety of different tree species on the other side. And we all of a sudden heard that there was a lot of movement in there. And so we realized there was a breeding herd of elephants just in those bushes right next to us. And, we kind of felt trapped for a moment, because we've got bulls all around on those sides. And then we have this breeding herd, which can be very dangerous because they have the young to look after. So they have the young ones with them. So, they'll be very quick to call the alarm and then maybe alert these bulls that there's danger. And so we might have these bulls charging towards us. Luckily, we managed to get safely out there, but my heart was beating so fast at that moment, and I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen. But we got out safely. We backtracked. We kept our eye on them. The breeding herd in the end seemed quite relaxed, and we slowly moved away and nothing happened. But that was a hair-raising moment.
Sorry, I was on mute there as I was babbling on. So,
yeah, sorry, I thought I'd lost my sound there for a moment.
Santiana is actually Santianita. I'm sorry, I do need, or Satianita. Sorry, maybe glasses for the next one. She's asking, how do you feel talking to new people at all times? And she means specifically, how do you feel talking to people from different tribes?
I love people, and I love talking to people. My main the major thing that drives me in my life is getting to know new people and making those connections. So I love talking to new people and any people. And if you can meet people with interesting cultures and tribes, it's so exciting, because it's an opportunity to connect and learn with somebody new and somebody that you know nothing about. So to me, that's part of why it's the main reason why I'm in this industry, is to talk to people who are different and have different backgrounds, and to be able to connect with them and learn something and maybe teach them something about me. And, that's ultimately what the whole thing is about for me.
So Chantel, the last, what do we have now, July? I need to keep looking. The last 4 months have been, I'm sure, very, very tricky for you. And I want to know, what have you been doing the last 4 months? How, I don't want to speak about it too long, because we've all heard too much about COVID, but how are you feeling, and what have you been up to, and what's going on in your heart and your soul? What's there?
Well, yeah, it's been a crazy time. I still sometimes can't believe that we're in it. I used to often say to people, that went on tour with me, I'd often say to them that I feel so fortunate and privileged to be doing the job that I'm doing, that I keep waiting for it to end. I keep waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under my feet, and for somebody to say, no, you can't get paid for living this wonderful life. It doesn't work like that. And I feel like it's actually happened now. They've pulled the rug out from under me. Here we are, stranded in beautiful Cape Town, and no way to connect with our guests and with other people. It's been really hard for me because I am specifically energized by people and by those relationships. So I've had to kind of, move into books. So I'm reading a lot. I'm trying to get out every day for a bit of exercise if it's not raining too much, because I'm a fair weather hiker, but go for a bit of a run and just get out in the sunshine. You can see I still have a bit of a tan. Anytime the sun is out, I'm out there sitting, reading my book in the sun. And I've made a lot of friends with my neighbors in my complex now, because I've never home, so I never got to know them before. So that's been quite fun, getting to know a few new people who are in close proximity with me. But yeah, it's been tough for me because I am so used to spending my time with other people. But yeah, no, keeping busy, and I love the fact that I'm doing this with you right now. That connects me back to the world again. So it's fantastic.
Brilliant. And I truly hope that any listener, anyone who's listening later on, gets to know you a bit better and maybe gets inspired to plan their next Africa trip. And let's rather talk about traveling than not traveling, right? So yes. A few weeks ago, you joined me on a live that I did with one of our brilliant consultants, Erica, who had presented one of her favorite Namibia road trips itineraries, and we put together a playlist for road tripping, which was amazing. What is on your bucket list? Or Chantel, what could you share with us? Anything you've seen or anywhere where you're guiding? What's your favorite spot and why? Can you describe a little bit of the feeling that you get once you're there? Tell us.
Okay, well, first bucket list is East Africa. I've never seen the migration. And as a wildlife lover, that's, just one of those things. I've been to Zanzibar, so I've been in the area, but I've never seen the Ngorongoro crater. I haven't gone to the gorillas or seen the migration through East Africa. So that's definitely top of the bucket list. I want to get there. And I believe they are opening borders and stuff, so I may have to sneak off there at some point. But favorites, it's always hard to pick favorites, but there is a place that had just resonated with me the first time I went. It's called the Kwai Game Reserve, and it's actually a bit of community land that lies sort of northeast of Moremi and southwest of Chobe. So it's this corridor that lies between these two major world-renowned national parks, and it's called the Kwai. And there's one of the fingers of the delta, one of the permanent rivers of the delta run through there, the Kwai River, and it is just spectacular. The game viewing is unsurpassed. I mean, I've been to so many places and so many parks. The feeling of the Kwai, you have these really large camel thorn trees that create this great atmosphere. When it heats up, you can smell the dust, and then you have the river, and there's pods of hippos, carrying on in the river. And it's just, I've never seen as many leopards in my life as I have seen there. It's one of the best places, I think, in Southern Africa to spot leopard. There's a huge population of them. It's you're quite likely to find wild dogs. I mean, it's difficult to find those guys, but that area is fantastic for them, especially if you can come in the season when they have their dens and they have their pups, because then they stick close to the same area. So you can go back and visit them a couple of times. And then you just get these huge herds of bachelor male, elephants. It's generally, you find a bachelor herd somewhere and there's 3 or 4 males, hanging sort of together but apart, spaced out. But in Kwai, you'll come around the corner of this dusty, sandy track. You need a 4x4. And then you just come around the corner and there could be 40 big bull elephants just swimming in the river, splashing water. It's spectacular. It's one of those places. And I think it struck me because the first time I went there, I was completely thrown in the deep end by Jenman.
I so wished you wouldn't bring up that. Thank you.
You guys gave me this wonderful trip. You gave me a 4x4 that you rented, because in those days we were still using Toyota Hi-Aces to do our trips. And I had 3 guests, 2 of which had been with me the previous year in September. This was in May. And we had designed this tour while we were on the tour together the previous September. And I'd been to so many new places on that trip, you know, literally just had my map and got in this vehicle and we drove. And we went to Kubu Island and Moremi and magical places. But we also stayed, we also spent a lot of time in the Kwai, and the roads, there's no way to really know. You just got to keep your direction, you know, you got to head northwest, you know, but you don't, the roads sort of intercross with each other, and then they you know, get together again later, and you just have no idea if you're going right, but you're distracted continuously by this amazing wildlife that you see, you know. So it takes so long to drive through there as well, because, you know, every few minutes you have to stop because there's another amazing animal to see. And that first, I think the combination of it being so new and undiscovered for me, and then this amazing wildlife, it's just always struck with me. And I've been back time and time again, and it never disappoints. It's just one of the very best places, and it's untouched, and it's not overrun with tourists. You know, you could easily spend your game drive and maybe spot one other safari vehicle heading off into some direction. So it's really special. It's a very special place.
I can second that. I think my first real Botswana experience was also in the Kwai Reserve with my back then partner and his family, and we camped at a lodge then called Monkwe Lodge actually, and we then drove every day out to the river and just sat by the river, and there's like some magnificent pictures of elephants right on the other side of the river and us standing on the side of the river. It is spectacular, and I second what you say about it's untouched. You don't see many vehicles in that area, and it's also community land, which makes it even more spectacular, as in that protected wilderness reserve. So I've got 2 things to say. Actually, sorry, there's so many comments coming in. I'm not too sure where to go, but you want to go to East Africa. So maybe what we should be doing is, if any one of our listeners would like to travel with Chantal as a guide to East Africa, they should leave their email addresses in the comments, and let's see what we can make happen as a special tour led by Chantal to Tanzania, Kenya, show you the migration and them getting to know you a bit better. That would be pretty cool. So please, guys, drop your email addresses in the comments, and we'll be in touch later and see what special deal we can work out there. Obviously, most likely only for next year, but hey, there's always something great about planning the next travel. And now, Chantal, I've got Jonathan here, whose birthday it was, by the way, on the 7th of July. Happy birthday, Jonathan. And he says there is a story about Chantal's lost cat. Can you please share the story before she goes?
Oh, wow. Hey, Jono. Yes, can I share the story quickly with you guys? It's the most. It's the craziest thing I've ever experienced. Like, my brother and I used to live together, and we got this cat together. And he was home based, and I would go on tours and come back, and you know, whatever. And the cat would always be staying with him. And then I started working for Jenman in the office as ops manager for 3.5 years, and so the cat came to stay with me again permanently. And then I went back to the road again, so the cat was back to my brother, but we kind of switched off. It was like a little bit like our child, and you know, we had shared custody of this cat. And one night I was bringing her back home to my brother because I was going on tour the next day, and she never liked traveling in cars very much. So she was always a bit panicky. And then the moment I opened the door, she just ran out, and she shot out of the car, and I couldn't find her. You know, it was just my father and I, we were looking around, and We had no idea where she was. I went on tour the next day. My brother put up posters and flyers for this cat for months after she was gone. And, you know, we assumed that she must have died, that some, you know, because there was a big storm in Cape Town not long after she disappeared. And the other day, my dad and I was walking. Because we live close together, about 2.5 km from each other. And so we would take these walks once exercise was allowed, you know, between 6 and 9 in the mornings.
So that's now during
now during lockdown. So we would meet up and go for a walk. And so this is about 1 year and 6 months after the cat disappeared. And we were walking in Milnerton near Centrepoint. And I said to my dad, there's a cat there that looks just like Floy. And I started calling her, and she turned around and came running towards us. And it was my cat. It was our cat that had been missing for 18 months. And so I picked her up and I said, cheers, Dad, I'm taking her home. And I walked straight home. And so that was the most amazing thing, because now I have a companion as well to keep me company during lockdown. It's been so wonderful having her home. It's just Jonathan, crazy question.
I'm glad you've never lost a client for 1 year and 6 months, but
I've never lost any clients. Never, not even for 5 minutes.
Chantel, Margot here asked a brilliant question, and I wonder if you can have some insight for her. She says, I would like to escort a women's only tour. How would you make it different than a tour with men and women, so a mixed tour? So what would you do differently if you had to guide a trip that is a female only trip? And I have a few agents that actually run these trips, including Sarah from Australia, Sarah Hoyland, and I would love to hear your input.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I mean, I would love to do something like that. I think it would be have a very different atmosphere if you have a whole bunch of women together. You know, we could do so many fun things. I think you'd have to add a little bit of wine tasting at some point. You know, maybe even special interests that us ladies, you know, maybe a bit of shopping could be added, depending where you went as well. But I think it would have a very interesting dynamic to have. I've actually done trips where just by default there have only been women on the tour, because only women booked, and I found that you really do connect closely, you know, and some really great friendships can form in those situations. So yeah, I mean, it would depend, I think, where we're going and what would be we'd be able to do. But certainly, you know, we could do fun things. We could even have, you know, morning yoga sessions, you know, before heading off on our day of travel or safari. Yeah, that's an interesting concept. I like that idea.
And I think what could also be great is actually going to visit community projects that are mainly female dominated, because I also believe, you know, getting back to our roots and to simpler ways of living, there's a lot we can learn pick up from that energy, from the resilience, and from that entrepreneurship, and just share stories and share hardships, but also opportunities and laughter together with other women from different tribes and nationalities. So yeah, Margot, I think that's a great suggestion, and certainly with, you know, putting your heads together with some other people from the industry, you could probably come up with some really cool stuff that people can experience. I wonder how the question would have been answered if it was a male only.
Very different. Yeah, very different.
The mind travels. Chantel, how do you introduce your guests to community projects and conservation platforms? I mean, we always talk about, you know, Jenman also upholds the ethos of responsible tourism. And how do you teach your guests once they're with you how to minimize their impact and what to look out for, where to possibly spend money, where to listen closer, where to just pay attention to?
Yeah, I think as a guide, we're in an ideal position to pass on any kind of advice to people on how they can be more responsible as tourists, especially this day and age. You know, we start off in our very first meeting with our guests. One of the topics that I discuss in the pre-departure meeting would be responsible tourism, and how we can ensure as we travel through this country that we're visiting, how we don't make too much of an impact, you know, so that we save water, that we don't litter, you know, we leave only footprints and take only pictures. I advise them if there's anything, like if we're in a new camp and this camp does recycling, I remind them that please guys take note of this. This is being done here, so we need to comply with that. And I can give them advice and tips on how to treat different cultures and different people in different areas, you know, because some people you get so many different tribes in Africa. That's part of the magic about this place, is we have such a variety of cultures, but they all have little ways that they like to go through their lives, you know, and they may take offense at certain things and may not be comfortable with certain things. And so we can advise them through that, how they can behave, but also we're in an ideal position to give them advice on who they can support, because a lot of people come to Africa and maybe they come from a first world country and they feel that they have more in life than what a lot of people in Africa have, and they're looking for something where they can make a little bit of a difference. And so because we travel to these places and visit the lodges and visit the community projects and the conservation projects, we can honestly give them true and honest advice about where is a good place for them to give a little bit of what they have to share. So I think that's important for our guests as well, is because they look for that. They want that trust. They want that honesty. And so we're in an ideal position to do that. So we can steer them in the right direction. Like in Lesotho at Malaya Lea Lodge, we stay there and they have a wonderful trust there for the people of that community. And we keep going back there, so we can even send pictures later to guests about things that have happened because of the contributions that they have made. So we're in a perfect position to give people advice about these kinds of things. So yeah, it's fantastic. We're in a privileged position, which is wonderful.
And I'm also proud of our guests that generally most guests that come on safaris, once they're here, they do ask, they do want to give, they do want to share, and with that as well, obviously proud of our entire communications team that puts that forward day in and day out. You know, come to Africa, make an impact, and to all of our listeners. Please do also share that same sentiment, that coming to Africa, you do make a true impact today as well as next year. So booking your trip, or at least planning it, keeps us all alive and kicking, and keeps us motivated going forward. So Chantel, there are obviously, you guys can't guide at the moment. Nothing is happening in all of Southern Africa. I want you, if you could give a shout out to your fellow guides, what would it be?
Hey guys out there, my gosh, what is this world we're living in today? It's insane. I just don't know how we got here, but yeah, I mean, we know why we're in this game and we know we love it. And so I would say do what you can to keep your head above water for the moment, and just, you know, this is an opportunity to broaden your knowledge, you know, to do a nice course, you know, build something up, and just keep the faith, because we will be back. And people are going to be wanting to travel even more because we haven't been able to. So stay strong out there. We're all in the same boat for the moment, but yeah, let's keep the positive attitude going. Do what we can to keep our minds going, and stay, you know, keep the brain functioning, and then we'll be even better when we get back.
And if any of our listeners are past clients, please also share with us who was your guide on safari, who would you like to see at the next episode of Safari Chronicles. And before I ask Chantel my last 3 questions, to sum this up, I do want to check in with her quickly, who would you like to nominate for the next session, Chantel?
I would love to see Todd come and chat to you. He's in Joburg, I believe, at the moment, so we know he's got decent internet connection, because there's so many guides I could nominate, but some of them are in rural areas and they don't have great internet, like Lucky. I would love to see Lucky as well. But yeah, I think Todd would be wonderful to chat to. I've had some fantastic trips with Todd. He's an amazing guide, has also been in the industry for so long. So yeah, I'd love to hear from him.
Great. Okay. I hope Todd is listening. He will get a call from our creative fairies that are working in the background with me here. And Chantel, the last questions that I have for you. If before we wrap this up, what is your spirit animal?
I would have to say the honey badger. It is the craziest animal, but it's feisty, it's tenacious, it's tough, it's fearless, and so I've been doing a job that can be hard at times, and I think it takes a bit of that tenacity and toughness too. So I think we have a bit in common. And if I do get a little bit nervous or scared about something, I just think about that honey badger and think about how small it is and how much it takes on. How I've seen honey badger attack an oryx. It's insane. And yeah, no, they're wonderful creatures. So I would definitely choose the honey badger.
Great, and I can definitely see a lot of you in a honey badger. So resilient, so much tenacity, and just like a total go-getter attitude. I mean, also from you being a guide, then coming into the office. How long were you in the office for?
It was just over 3.5 years. It was 3 years, and then I came back. Well, 3 years and 3 months, and then I left, and then I came back again for another 3 months. So yeah, about 3.5 years.
That transition from being on the road to being in the office behind a computer and dealing with people like me and others in the office, and that is quite incredible. I know a lot of guides try, and then after a year, 6 months, a year, it's like, oh my god, I have to get out there again, and that also is quite some perseverance to stick it out for 3 years. Well done. The next question I put forward to you here is, what is your favorite and most spiritual safari experience?
Well, I would have to say it's difficult to choose, because when you go on safari, there's so many magical moments, and because you're out there in nature, it all feels so spiritual and just surreal almost. But for me, probably, and this was on my very first Jenman trip that I ever went on. I met Garth Jenman on a Tuesday for an interview, and on the Thursday, I went on my very first trip with 14 school kids from America, from Steamboat Springs in Colorado. And we had a wonderful trip from Cape Town to Johannesburg, going through Namibia. They did some fantastic projects there as well, helping communities and things. But we also went to the Okavango Delta. And I had been waiting to go there all my life, and this would be my first visit. I teased them as we were getting closer. I'd tell them, the mosquitoes are as big as hummingbirds, and the spiders will carry off babies and things like that, get the teenagers all freaked out. But I was very excited to be there. And we actually camped on an island in the Delta, and we went for a walk one day, and we were charged by a lioness. And the way it happened, most of the group had there was some in front and some behind, and there was me and 2 guys, Dustin and Dylan. And this lioness came running out of the long grass towards us all of a sudden. And I must tell you, yeah, that was a moment. But we stood our ground. We didn't run away. I just reached out my hands and grabbed Dustin and Dylan and just stood there. And luckily, she stopped about 20 meters away from us, gave a little growl, and then the whole group came closer together with us. And then we moved away from her up a little termite mound, and then we could actually see in the distance there was a male lion with some cubs. So she was literally just coming to tell us, hey, you're getting too close to my family, please back off.
I like that. Hey, you're getting too close. I'm going to come and roar at you for a bit. And then the last question, Chantel. What is the most courageous thing you've ever done?
Well, firstly, not running away from that lioness, I think was very courageous. But yeah, in general, I think, you know, for me, I'm not a person who is not afraid of things. You know, I feel fear and concern when I'm in a difficult situation. So for me personally, I think what has been the most challenging and where I felt the most courageous because I was able to accomplish it and get through it was when I've gone to new places that I'd never been, and maybe there isn't a great map or there isn't a great, you know, road system or whatever, where I've literally had to talk to locals to find out the information, and, you know, and just take on these big journeys with people depending on me and trusting me to take care of them throughout this time and feed them and look after them and drive them safely. But in areas that I've never been, I think that's, you know, that's where I felt the most courageous and the most accomplished through my job, was when finishing that tour, you know, with all thumbs up. And yeah, that's definitely, because it's not that I don't feel the fear or the worry, but I do it anyway, and I conquer that fear and I get through it. So
I love that. And I think it's something that we both have in common. It's like, you know, we are very quick to be courageous. Doesn't mean that we're not scared, but we just do it anyway. With the right dose of caution, I guess. And
preparation.
Awesome.
You always got to have the preparation. I would never attempt it unless, you know, I got all the maps. I spoke to everybody every day. You know, I read everything I could. So, you know, definitely with a lot of prep.
Yeah, great. Chantel, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really brilliant. For anyone who wondered, hang on. Apparently I need to mention this here. Jay said her favorite memory on safari was after a restless night listening to some huffing outside our raised tent, having Chantel tell my husband and I spent time stairs.
Hey Jay, how you doing?
Beautiful. So again, anyone in the audience, thank you so much for listening. And again, if you want to make that trip with Chantel to East Africa happen, drop your email address in the comments, and we'll see what we can figure out there. Chantel would be so delighted, I'm sure, to go up to East Africa on the back of this Facebook Live. Then any questions that you've put down in the live comments, Chantel will go through and answer them during the next course of the day. So please bear with us and keep popping those questions in if there's any that we haven't answered. So thank you so much. And Chantel, it was lovely talking to you. And
thank you, Katja. Same to you.
Things. And people who want to listen to this or be reminded of our next lives coming up, the next one will be with Rachel, actually, on a trip to Botswana that she's presenting, and there will be another wonderful competition be run on a 9-day safari through Botswana. That will be on the 3rd of August, and then the next Guide Chronicles will be just 14 days later, so that makes the 17th of August. So looking forward to seeing you there. Like our Facebook page, follow us, and to get the reminders. And Chantel, have fun with your cats. Right?
Oh, thanks, man. Lovely to see you, Katja.
Cheers.